Opinion Nation, does America need a break from Twitter? New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Maggie Haberman says she's taking a break from Twitter, slamming the platform for its toxic discourse. Haberman, who's been covering President Trump and the White House, explained her decision in an op-ed for her newspaper. She wrote this, quote, "The viciousness, toxic partisan anger, intellectual dishonesty, motive questioning, and sexism are at all-time highs with no end in sight. It's a place where people who are understandably upset about any number of things go to feed their anger, where the underbelly of free speech is at its most bilious. If there's one thing that could bring both parties together, maybe it's this." Fox News reporter John Roberts tweeted this, quote, "In solidarity with my colleague Maggie, whom I believe is an absolutely stellar journalist, I too am pulling back from Twitter. She has it right, a bilious anger video game." Now, it's unclear why Haberman made that decision when she did, but her tweet came amid a broader discussion about civility in politics, and it got us to thinking, maybe she's onto something. Maybe if we all pulled back from social media, especially Twitter, for just a bit, it would do us some good. Opinion Nation, I want to hear from you. Does America need a break from Twitter? Let's talk. Joining me now is Amy Kremer, co-founder for Women for Trump. Jim Garrity is here, a senior political correspondent for the National Review, and pop culture expert John Murray joins me too. Welcome to all of you. Amy, I will start with you. Maggie Haberman says she's quitting Twitter because you just can't have a good conversation with anyone on Twitter any longer because people are crazy. Is she right?
Well, as I'll take a term you used earlier, it is a little crazy pants. I mean, you can't go there. It's not a book club. And there is a lot of vile and vicious behavior going on there from people. And I think that, Carol, part of it is they can do it behind a keyboard without their name being out there, without their picture being out there, and there's no accountability for it. When you go out, I was at an event yesterday where there were counter-protesters there, but it wasn't as vile and vicious as what we see on Twitter, and people are unhinged. I think people, I'm not saying pull away from Twitter totally, but we do need less social media in our lives and a little bit more personal interaction with people. And if you don't have anybody to interact with, get a dog. I mean, if anything, a dog calms you down and brings you peace and serenity, and that dog will love you more than anything.
You got that. You'll just pet your dog and all your anger will dissipate.
Dog's always happy to see you.
Jim, I think Amy has a point. You don't have to give your name to use Twitter. Maybe Twitter should require that. And, you know, on second thought, why doesn't it?
Yeah, Facebook requires more information about you before you can set up an account. I've always noticed that if you find yourself getting a lot of criticism from someone on Twitter, they either don't have a picture of themselves and it's a first name, initial, and then 8 random numbers. And they seem to be posting around Moscow time. And all of a sudden they emphasize, I like baseball and pie with apples, like all Americans. Then you may be dealing with a Russian bot operation. I do notice the Haberman and a lot of these other journalists who say, that's it, I'm backing away from Twitter. They very rarely say, I'm shutting down my account, I'm going away cold turkey. And what this is, and I say this as someone who's, kind of drawn back a bit from Twitter myself, there's still a chunk of the audience out there, and you got to put your stuff out. You put links to your articles, and the traffic makes it worthwhile. Now, maybe that portion that's out there on Twitter is the crazy portion, but they click through, and those clicks count as much as anybody else's. So that's why this love, hate, attraction, repulsion nature to Twitter. It's very hard to go cold turkey because then you're cutting yourself off from at least some portion of attracting people's attention to your work.
I talked to one person in the know, John, who told me that if you have 100,000 followers on Twitter, you are somebody. You are an opinion maker in this nation, no matter what. And then I'm thinking to myself, there's so much dumb stuff on Twitter. It's like, who cares?
Exactly, Carol. Here's the thing. Twitter is what I call the world of wackadoos. It's where thumb thugs gather to say things that they would never say to your face. I mean, I've been dealing with a barrage of hate tweets over the last 5 days because I supported Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies of The View in that insufferable interview with Judge Jeanine Pirro from Fox News. And so I've gotten the most vile, most vicious, most racist tweets. But I'm here to tell you there's a blessing in the block button. You can block these people, you can make them go away, and you can continue to engage with the folks that, Twitter's a good place when you want to watch TV with a community of like-minded people.
Carol, can I say, piggybacking on that, I actually think the mute button is better than the block button, because the idiots out there, I don't want to give them the satisfaction of blocking them. Let them just keep on rambling, but mute them. I don't see what they're saying, don't hear it, and I just move on.
No, that's true, because sometimes, Jim, they do make hay, to use an old cliche.
Oh, yeah. They'll celebrate if you block them.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
If you block them, then somehow you were disrespectful to them, or you weren't open to a debate of them calling you the F word 20 times in a row. But if you hit the mute button,
if you block them, you never get to see them comment on anything again. You can talk about me all day long, but if I don't want you in my social space, I want you gone for good.
With mute, they yell into the ether, and you never hear them for the rest of the time. They wonder why you're ignoring them, and so I find that more satisfying. I bet you half the audience of the show I may have muted. They don't know that already.
Carol,
so I have to broach the subject of the president, Amy. I just have to, because he sends out some incendiary tweets, and some people might say that he's fueling this fire. He's throwing gas on this fire every single day. Is that fair?
Listen, the president was elected. We know that he loves Twitter. He gets his word out on Twitter. I had somebody tell me yesterday, I'm only on Twitter to follow the president. That's all I do. And so he uses it. Maybe he says things that people don't agree with all the time. Maybe he doesn't say it so eloquently or artfully, but his supporters love him being on Twitter, like him speaking straight from the heart, straight from his mind, and that there's no filter there, that he doesn't have to go through the media. And so his supporters like it. But at the end of the day, I think what people are focused on, his supporters, are his results. He's a results-oriented president. That's what matters, and that is what we're going to see matters on Election Day.
I do hear Amy, about unfiltered messages to the public, and that's great. But many times his tweets are simply not true. And as a journalist, I have to pick and choose which ones to show people, or I have to explain why it's not true. And I think that, in my mind, lying on Twitter or saying something that's not factually correct is just as bad as calling someone a name. John, am I wrong?
No, and Amy, thank you so much for giving us our Monday morning entertainment. It's like following a comic on Twitter. The things that you just said about the president was so laughable. I was in my chair here dying. Here's the thing. If anybody on Twitter should have ever been removed for hate speech, for racist conduct, for inappropriate behavior, it's the man who's in the White House. And, Carol, you said untrue. The man lies. There have been countless reports that the man has lied something into the thousands daily since being in the White House. But, you know, if those who follow him are entertained by him, great. At some point, people will look at the history books and see the things that this man has written on Twitter, and his unhealthy relationship with the King's English and his poor grammar, and we will be embarrassed by all of this.
Well, I will say that Donald Trump's name and his face are on there, so maybe requiring all people to, you know, use their name if they're a Twitter user wouldn't be quite so effective, Jim.
It assumes people have shame, and I wish that I wish that was the case. I'm not sure it is. I also would point out, as much as satisfying as it might be to blame Trump for the example that he's setting, I want us to imagine a scenario in which Trump gets bumped on the head, and he has a total personality shift, and he suddenly becomes the most polite human being on the face of the earth. Never uses coarse language, never uses name calling, never. Do you think the culture would change dramatically? Sadly, I don't think that's the case. I think he may have kind of given people a psychological permission slip to let out their id, to let out their worst side. But I don't think this genie goes back in the bottle pretty well. And I think if you're looking for an excuse to go out and say nasty things about people, you're going to find that excuse, whether it comes from the president or anybody else in our public life.
And I do agree, Amy, I do agree with Jim there. I mean, the problem was there before Mr. Trump became president.
It was there, but it has gotten worse. It has gotten worse, and I don't think that is. I think social media has made the world a smaller place. I mean, internet technology has its benefits, but social media, I think we need less of it in our lives. And actually, I think we need less politics in our lives, quite honestly. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what President Trump does. The people who don't like him, they're never going to be happy with him. He could save somebody from drowning. drowning, and they would say he can't swim if he walked on water to save him. That's where we are in this world right now, and I honestly don't expect it will get better anytime soon. I myself try to set a good example. I don't go out there and call names. I'm more than happy to have constructive dialogue with people. We may not agree, but let's find something we do agree on, and just as if we were sitting down at a kitchen table having a discussion. And I will always be respectful of the other person's opinion and not call names, and I think we could all do better with that.
Okay, John, I can see by your face what your answer would be, so I'll end the conversation here. Amy Kramer.
I agree with Amy. I do agree with Amy.
Oh, good.
I do agree with Amy, yeah.
Oh, that makes me happy. See, we can end this segment on a happy note. Amy Kramer, Jim Garrity, John Murray, thank you so much.